You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And I'm back. You're back. We're here. The summer is over, which is always a melancholy passing moment. But the fall is here with its crispness and its beginning chilly evenings and its coziness and its comforts. There's something comforting about autumn. And I'm very excited because I have a new book out. A new book of poems. The 8th book of poems. It's called Harvesting Darkness. And it's from Spinifex Publishers. And it's up now on Amazon and on all the online platforms and in your neighborhood bookstore. And I'm very proud of it. I think, she said humbly, but with some honesty, I think it's the best work I've done yet. Maybe more to come. Definitely more to come, because I spent the summer finishing another book, a book of essays, which won't be out until next year. So we won't pay that much attention to the prose yet, because we want to focus on the poetry. And I am going to read some of the poems for you today, because I'm very eager to share them. And so we will begin, but we will start with what happened over the summer, what I did last summer, what you did last summer, and go from there. And before we do anything else, we need to go inside the headlines. This summer, after years of strategic litigation led by Mexican feminist organizations, the Mexican Supreme Court decriminalized abortion at the federal level. Better than we could do here north of the border. Building on a ruling 2 years ago that declared criminal penalties for abortion unconstitutional, the Supreme Court struck down laws calling abortion a crime at the federal level. Now, no one in Mexico can be prosecuted by the judicial system for receiving abortion care, and federal health institutions must provide abortion care to those seeking it. Bravissima, hermanas. By the way, did you know that 85% of the politicians who have voted for abortion bans in the United States following on the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision are men? Not that we find that particularly astonishing. Also, by the way, Donald Trump was actually finally indicted. Hallelujah. Long before Dobbs, the move to make a non-prescription contraceptive pill available for all ages had received widespread support from specialists in reproductive and adolescent health, and from groups like the AMA, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and the American Academy of Family Physicians. In a survey last year by the healthcare research organization KFF, more than 3/4 of women of reproductive age said they favored an over-the-counter pill, primarily because of convenience. Nearly 40% said they would be likely to use it. Those most likely to opt for the product included women already taking birth control pills, women without health insurance, and Latinas, so the survey found. Well, at last, the FDA has now approved the first birth control pill to be sold without a prescription in the United States. This could greatly expand contraceptive access. The pill is expected to be available in early 2024. It's called Opill, O-P-I-L-L, and it will become the most effective birth control method available over the counter. More effective at preventing pregnancy than condoms, spermicides, and other non-prescription methods. Experts in reproductive health said that its availability could be especially useful for young women, teenagers, and those who have difficulty dealing with the time, costs, or logistical hurdles involved in visiting a doctor to obtain a prescription. Frederica Wellgren, the global vice president for women's health at the Dublin-based manufacturer of the pill, the Perrigo Company, said that the company was committed to making the pill accessible and affordable to women and people of all ages. That's a quote. She also said that the company would have a consumer assistance program to provide the pill at no cost to some women. Interestingly, at a time of fierce divisions over abortion, many anti-abortion groups have declined to criticize over-the-counter birth control. Opposition appears to come primarily from some Catholic organizations and from Students for Life Action. Late last spring, a panel of 17 independent scientific advisors to the FDA, including obstetrician gynecologists, adolescent medicine specialists, a breast cancer specialist, and experts in consumer health behavior and in health literacy, voted unanimously that the benefits of making a birth control pill available without a prescription vastly outweighed the risks. Donald Trump was indicted for a second time. Finally, and it's taken my colleagues in the press long enough, the media is at last linking positive coverage like that FDA release of the over-the-counter birth control pill, linking it to feminist activism. This actually occurs sometimes without our having to stand on street corners and demand due credit by blowing through a big brass trumpet. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said in terms of connecting the dots between rapidly increasing global natural disasters and climate change. The tragic wildfires on the island of Maui in Hawaii are one example. The Canadian wildfires that blanketed the northern part of the United States in unbreathable, unsafe orange air are another. But so are the historic floods in Libya and the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria and Morocco and the so-called once-in-a-century superstorms and hurricanes bearing down on us with almost daily normalcy. If the media connected those dots, and every time there was one of those natural disasters, which is sometimes like twice a day in the world at large, there would be better consciousness about this, and there would become, in time, better action. As for world politics, it's a lot of the same old, same old. In specific, Afghan women are now virtually worse off than they were before the war. And more about their plight, which is utter desperation, on a forthcoming episode of this program. As for Iran, last year's brave feminist demonstrations seem for the moment to have ebbed and gone down to simmer, but I trust those Iranian women to resurface and make life patriarchal hell. The Ukraine war grinds on. The autocratic despots of North Korea and the Russian Federation are meeting over a weapons deal. Israel has taken a sharp and horrifying turn to the right under Netanyahu. And in what is the world's largest war, Ethiopia and Eritrea seem to be at it again. But no one seems to be paying much attention. On the other hand, Donald Trump has been indicted for a third time, which, of course, always garners attention. Another attention-getter was Spain's victory over England in the Women's World Cup for soccer. Jennifer Hermoso was the star player there, and the win was being celebrated, that is, until Luis Rubiales, who is the president of Spain's Soccer Federation and a more macho human being you could not imagine in your worst nightmares, until Luis Rubiales decided to seize her head, Hermosa's head, and open mouth kiss her forcibly on the field in live TV with the whole world watching in supposed celebration. She made it very clear during, before, and after that she had not consented, although, of course, he claims that she had. Well, he then proceeded, this man, to grab his crotch and make lewd gestures while standing right next to the Spanish royal family. He's a real treat. Well, this turned into a major controversy, with Rubiales and his few friends blaming Jennifer Hermoso for the entire thing. It was all her fault. But even in Catholic Spain, that won't fly. Pressure kept building against him, eventually becoming pressure even to resign from the Federation, and FIFA even turned against him. All the while, not only women athletes, but male athletes and plain ordinary people all over the world said, we're sending statements of support to Jennifer Hermoso, and Spain was getting a dose of its own Me Tooism. And he has now finally resigned. So Spain's triumph is no more tarnished by his presence. And that just delights me. AI, artificial intelligence, was all the rage and the scandal and the fear. The writers went on strike in Hollywood, and the rest of the industry in solidarity joined them. And as an aside, if ever again anyone in my presence refers to creative work by artists, writers, musicians, choreographers, painters, sculptors, etc., refers to it as content, I wish to go on record in advance as saying that I will not be responsible for any violence I might commit. Oh, and Donald Trump has now been indicted for a 4th time, and booked, and fingerprinted, thanks to Fannie Willis, the courageous African-American female district attorney in Georgia. No one is above the law. Hooray for D.A. Willis. We need to take a short break now, but I'll be back directly with, I'm very excited about this, some poems from Harvesting Darkness, the new book, coming right up. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
I want to start by saying a few words about the book itself and its contents, and its title, Harvesting Darkness. It's in 3 parts, interestingly enough, and when we first discovered what those subsections were, it just curled my toes with delight. First is reaping, the second is threshing, and the third is winnowing. You know, the 3 processes that you go through as you are bringing in the sheaves. And that's what the book is really about. It's about a harvest of a life. It's about the tenacity of living and of life. I was worried at first that it was too dark, that it had poems in it about aging, or about even some about death. And I thought, well, people aren't going to like that. And first of all, I think that was underestimating my audience, which is very smart. And secondly, I think that aging and death await us all. There's no big surprise in that one. But the examination of the temporal quality of flesh, even though it may try to heal itself, the only way it really can, as you'll hear in one of the poems later on, heal itself is, in a sense, through the permanence of art. So these poems are the poems of an old woman now, and they're written with a skill that I was sometimes surprised to find in myself. Not only a skill of self-healing, but a skill of practicing poetry, the practice of which involves form. So these poems are, many of them, in strict form, in sonnet form. There's even a villanelle snuck in there for you English majors and those of you who studied the French form of the villanelle. More about that in a subsequent episode. But the sonnet forms that are here are Petrarchan, they're Shakespearean, they're Spenserian, and they're my own version of a sonnet. They are, however, consistent in their rhyme scheme, in their meter, and in their formulation. And again, they point to structure as a creation of the self in trying to heal its temporary fragility, which is unhealable, after all. We might as well realize that, and even celebrate it, which some would say I managed to do by the end of this book. Anyway, you will judge that. And in the meanwhile, let's begin. I'm going to read some poems from the book today, and then I'm going to read one poem from the book each time I close an episode through the end of the year. So those are my special gifts to you, and I hope you enjoy them. Here we go. This is the first poem in the book, and you might say that it is about the tenacity of life. So here we go into Harvesting Darkness. This poem is called These Hands. I study them by bedside lamplight, an old woman's hands, strong still but with a loosening grip, bones delicate, gloved in blue embroideries, prominent veins, skin spotted brown as a hen's egg, nails clean, unpolished, short for typing, fingers starting to stiffen, curving to curl toward claws. They twitch and tremor sometimes. Often they cramp, drop teaspoons, fumble keys. They've held a lot in their day. A newborn's featherweight and protest signs and bales of hay. Stirred soup and rallies. Played chess, tricks, fair, Bach, and for keeps. They've applauded, beckoned, shaken themselves as fists. They've clasped 1,000 other hands, made lists, caressed the flesh of lovers. They never presumed fingerprints were an identity, lifelines of fate, though they did long to hold the whole world in themselves, like the woman sang. Once graceful, these now gnarled hands knot and knit, not walls but stories, grim tales at times, a witch's hands. A child might fear such hands, though they still twist in grief for other hands that punch time clocks, pray to the void for mercy, pound gavels to muffle screams, pull triggers. I study how to teach these hands to let go, Let it all go. Let go now. But they reach past me, grabbing pen and pad to scribble a message, words I will find all but illegible once these white-knuckle hours unclench to loose this past cold light's gold dawn. Hold fast, hold tight, hold on. This next poem is called Pearls. I have long been fascinated by pearls because when an oyster finds itself with an irritant of any sort inside its shell, pearls embody the act of the oyster to try and heal itself from that irritant. In other words, the oyster excretes certain fluids from itself internally and lays down layer after layer of them like a bandage, not only performing its healing purpose, but also producing great beauty in the pearl or in the similar iridescence of the abalone shell. Well, that inspired this poem, as well as learning that to maintain their glow, pearls actually require a touch of warm flesh and natural body oils. Pearls. She slept naked sometimes, wearing only pearls, stared in the mirror at her weathered face and smiled, brushed silver hair grown back post-chemo as white curls, but noticed something in the eyes, obsessive, wild with pain as an oyster frantic to wrap the wound gouged raw by sand grains, pour its tender flesh, internal bandage, self on self, winding round to layer smooth agony's sharp edge toward satin, iridescent art. A parrotfish chews reef, gnaws rock, searches for algae, digests this into fine white sand, crystals of which will madden the oyster once they are the oyster's guest. Some oysters escape harvesting and sink to the seabed, wound and all, where parrotfish seek their prey. But unworn pearls grow dim, needing warmth and oil to satisfy the itch, a skin to graze, a pulsing heart. She sleeps naked, wearing pearls to play her part. This poem is a sonnet, and it is dedicated to Janita Maria, and it's called A Sighting. It's true. All of the facts in it, like those in other of my poems that reflect nature or the cosmos, are factual. A sighting. Beautiful, scarred, brave, timorous, young vegetarian, omnivorous to learn the whole of things, you spied it. We froze, garden statues, but for the glance our gaze exchanged, confirming the iridescent blur was real. In a city backyard, wings a-whir, a ruby-throated hummingbird. Hush, I thought. Some other day teach how that furnace heart pounds 1,200 beats a minute. That beak can suck a meadow dry of sweetness, stake then stab a rival's breast until the other wears blood-ruby beads, wet on each tiny feather. You were radiant as it drained the trumpet vine. Again, I was glad I'm in your life, and you in mine. This poem, Lace Makers, is dedicated to Suzanne Braun Levine, and it is based on a great painting by Diego Velázquez in 1656, which hangs in the Prado in Madrid. It's a group portrait, and it's called Las Meninas, which means the ladies in waiting. And my version, which is Lace Makers, because the people in attendance are ladies in waiting, is as follows. The little Infanta, Princess of Spain, was dressed in lace for her portrait. Yet courtiers thought her not perfect enough, so added the dwarf to heighten her beauty. The painting is famous because of the dwarf. They also assumed it our duty for centuries to gladly go blind, tatting the edges of their nightcaps, cuffs, wedding hems, petticoats, kerchiefs, and veils, all without flaws, without even not one flaw. They never perceived our revenge, that the flaw had to be so exquisite, perfected, minute, unseen, and yet visible, it was safe from being detected. To this day they don't see it. The flaw is the point. It's the necessity. It's everything. The work's lifeless without it. The bruise on the pear, the planet's wobble, the fungus, the mutation, the disobedience, the deliberate flaw in the Navajo blanket to let the soul out. Here is a poem that was many years in the writing. Notes jotted here and there as I trotted around the world, because I traveled widely in the 1980s and the early 1990s. In every continent, in more than 80 countries. This poem is entitled Necropolitans. In certain cities, the poor don't live in slums or ghettos, but in the necropolis, city of the dead, of sunken graves and those above ground, where floods are common, whole neighborhoods with mass paupers' pits, middle-class tombstones, or, for the rich, crypts, statuary, mausoleums. Coming from the airport, you drive through miles of Cairo's vast necropolis, ancient and modern sprawl alike. Mexico City is flecked with them, and Metro Manila. Egypt's great necropolis once housed thousands of slaves to build the pyramids, skilled masons, architects, physicians, cooks, priests, embalmers. These days, necropolitans go about their lives returning home from begging or from a day job like camel tending for the tourist rides, wending their way between the headstones, women lugging groceries onto improvised shelves inside the catafalques, while children run and laugh around the graves, and lovers seek privacy inside sepulchres of families who boast formidable tombs. They eat and drink, and they have sex among the dead, thinking nothing of it. Why should they? Don't we do it all the time? Eat, drink, make love, here among the dying. In Mexico, the Day of the Dead draws people to the cemetery to share picnics, reminisce with family ghosts, suck sugar skeletons and candy skulls. In Manila, they sing to the dead. Being a necropolitan is not so unfamiliar after all. The notion you might kick aside a small bone looking to be human, dislodged from someone somewhere, or cock your head in pity at a tablet that grieves a child clipped at the stem of her blossoming loveliness, only age 12. Gestures as lightly preoccupied as living itself is. And all the while, a drum's slow, silent pound tolls its dirge beneath you like an underground river whose currents pulse incessant as it flows toward emptying into an omnivorous sea. We have to take another pause here, and I will return right after that with some fighting words. You weren't surprised now, were you? The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Sometimes a poem can consist of fighting words. This poem is in 3 parts, and it's called The Frequency, and it has an epigraph. Federal prosecutors in Brazil opened an investigation into a reported massacre of 10 members of an uncontacted indigenous tribe gathering eggs along the river in a remote part of the Amazon where the tribe encountered gold miners. The miners bragged about the killings and about cutting up the bodies and throwing them in the river. Funding has been drastically cut for indigenous affairs, despite recent and continuing intrusions, which activists say amounts to genocide. That is based on a report in the New York Times, dated September 2017. The Frequency. 1. Back from the dead, here you are again, this time your reach exceeding your grasp, trying your most but not always your best. Blame the frequency. A low-level frequency you don't even notice till you stumble across it, when otherwise focused, renewing your license to practice poetry. And there it is. There it's been all along. Soft, subtle, stealthy, a never-off motor once you're awake, oscillating between 3 hertz and 7. Part of you always in shudder. And why not? Some other universe may permit stillness, but might cost you too high a price. Poetry. Here we shudder in terror when seeing the truth of ourselves, tremble awestruck at the beauty. Our disease a propensity for metaphor that shakes us to the mortal core. 2. When tourists float the Amazon, what's left of native peoples sometimes stand small clusters between 3 and 7 on the banks. The women shout, "Pishtako," which means evil strangers who come to steal our oil. Translated, this strikes the tourist as a protest against mining for natural resources. Which is true, partly. Slashed and burnt jungle, agribusiness now, feeds cattle, yields soy. Mining sends minerals to China. One tribe in Brazil, the Akunsu, has only 4 members alive. Near them, The man of the hole, as anthropologists call him, lives in a hollow on the floor of the jungle, firing arrows if approached. He's the last of his tribe. It's accurate, then, what the tourists think, but just not the way tourists think it. The term Pishtaco comes from the 16th century, when Spanish conquistadores explored the Amazon and found to their frustration how humidity quickly flaked their muskets into rust. Inventive men, devoted to their Christ, they simply killed the natives, boiled the coppery bodies in iron pots, and used the rendered fat to grease their weapons. Pishtaco. 3. The frequency never ceases, but we adapt to it. We ignore it. Unnatural resources become normal. What practicing poetry spoils you for grasping, though, is how each of us in this dark universe has not wakened more frequently to just such a frequency, how we are each of us not in unceasing shudder at what we are. Not one seizure of grief after another, not convulsed with mourning, shivering from cold blood oozing, sluggish along rusted hearts, not cramped by sorrow, spastic with fear. Back from the dead again, here you are, trying your best. This universe, this terminal health some call metaphor, trembling with dread at the price of a poem. Dig while you can, I translate. Dig, dig deeper. Then hide and wait. Wait. Force yourself to survive. Fire poems when strangers approach you. You might be the last of your tribe. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.